The cold wind whipped through the streets of that small town, rattling the wooden signs hanging above dusty storefronts. In the alley behind a bakery, Clara crouched on the ground, her fingers trembling as she counted her meager possessions. She had a few crusts of stale bread, a handful of matches, and the thin rags she wore. Each tiny flame she struck felt like a flicker of hope against the darkness that surrounded her. Clara's days merged into nights, and every hour dragged her deeper into a struggle for survival. The bakery, though warm and fragrant, was not her own. She could only watch as the baker, a jolly man with flour-dusted hands, handed loaves of fresh bread to smiling customers. They greeted each other with laughter while Clara stood in the shadows, feeling more invisible by the hour. The bread was her lifeline, but it came with a price: matches. Trading bread for matches wasn't exactly a fair exchange, but Clara needed those matches. Each spark lit up her tiny world for just a moment, and warmth followed as she clutched the flames close. She could make a little fire to stave off the cold at night, but more often than not, it merely reminded her of what she lacked: safety, food beyond scraps, and a home. One day, as Clara sat on the cobbled street, clutching her bread closely, a cowboy strutted into town. His spurs jangled with every step, catching the light from the sun as he walked. He had a broad-brimmed hat that shielded his face, but the warmth in his smile was unmistakable. His rough hands spoke of hard work and endless stories. The townsfolk watched him with curiosity, whispering behind their hands as he made his way toward the bakery. Clara, too, felt drawn to him. Unlike the hurried foot traffic she was used to, this man moved with purpose, his brown leather boots making an easy melody on the ground. The wind, which had nipped at her skin for weeks, seemed to soften around him. She instinctively pressed her bread closer, a mix of hope and fear flickering in her chest. The cowboy paused, glancing around the alley. He must have spotted Clara, for he stepped toward her. He called, his voice warm like a campfire. Clara held her breath, unsure of how to react. Strangers had passed her many times, eyes drifting over her face as if she were part of the dusty scenery. But this man saw her. He asked, kneeling down so they were eye to eye. Clara swallowed, the weight of her truth feeling heavier than the sack of bread. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "I am just waiting," she finally whispered, her voice barely above a breath. The cowboy frowned, his brow furrowing. Clara looked at her bread, her heart sinking. He studied her, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "You shouldn't be alone out here, it's too dangerous. Come on, I've got a place just down the road." Clara hesitated. Trusting strangers didn't come easily, and she had learned to put her guard up, but there was something in his eyes, a genuine kindness she longed to believe. "I don't want to cause trouble," she murmured, thinking of the warm meal that could be hers. "Hey, a bit of bread and company won't hurt." He winked, and for a moment Clara felt a rush of bravery. She nodded slowly and took his extended hand. As they walked, he introduced himself. "Name's Jake," he said, his accent rich and laid back. "Been riding through the country, just passing through." Clara felt light with hope as she followed him to a small diner on the corner. Inside, the walls were painted a cheery yellow, and sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating booths filled with people. Jake led her to a table and settled into the seat across from her. Clara couldn't remember the last time she had sat down for a meal like this. The waitress, a robust woman with a welcoming smile, brought over a steaming plate of biscuits and gravy. Clara's stomach growled, betraying her desperate hunger. She asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Absolutely. I can't eat it all by myself," he joked. As Clara dug in, tasting each bite like it was a delicacy crafted just for her, Jake picked at his food, watching her with amusement. He asked, his voice gentle. "A little farm outside of town," she said, her mouth full. "But it's gone now. Drought took everything. Now I'm just here." Jake leaned back in his chair, absorbing her words. He could see the shadows behind her bright eyes, hiding stories of fear and uncertainty. "Maybe," she replied, a hint of doubt creeping back in. "Hey, I mean it. I've met a lot of folks on my travels, but not many stick it out like you." He smiled warmly, and Clara felt a flicker of confidence ignite within her. After they finished their meal, Jake leaned forward, whispering like he was sharing a secret. "You know, I'm headed to the rodeo tomorrow. It'll be exciting with music and horses and people. You should come." Rodeo, the word danced in her mind, painting a picture of bright lights, laughter, and the thrill of cheering crowds. Clara hesitated. "And leave the bakery?" Jake shrugged. "Sometimes you gotta take risks." Clara's heart raced. Could she do it? The thought of breaking free from the pain of her routine was intoxicating, more alive than she had felt in so long. A sense of adventure washed over Clara, pushing aside the doubt. "Okay," she decided, a smile breaking across her face for the first time in ages. "Great, I'll make sure it's a day to remember," Jake grinned. As they left the diner, Clara walked beside Jake, feeling the warmth of each step. The cold that had nipped at her all winter seemed to fade. Despite the challenges that awaited her, she felt like a new person, brave, ready to step into the unknown. When they got to the rodeo the next day, Clara was struck by the colors, lights, and energy of the crowd. The scent of popcorn and fried dough filled the air, laughter echoed all around. She held onto Jake's arm, an anchor in the whirl of excitement. As they cheered on Cowboy's riding bulls, Clara found herself laughing, clapping, and feeling free. For the first time, the weight of her past seemed distant. Jake always stood by her side, cheering louder than anyone as he encouraged her to step out to dance, to sing along with the music filling the air. Each moment with him filled her heart. She felt a connection she hadn't realized she was missing. She confided in him about the bakery, the cold nights, and the loneliness. He listened, his eyes soft with understanding, and offered comfort like a warm blanket against the chill of her memories. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the fairground, Jake took a breath, gathering his words. He looked deep into her eyes. "I see something special in you. You have a spark." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. Jake had seen her, truly seen her. "I don't know if I can be special," she whispered. "You already are. You've survived so much." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, and for a moment time stood still. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. Everything felt possible. As the stars began to twinkle above, they watched the last of the rodeo events. The sky painted itself with colors no brush could capture, and Clara realized she was no longer just surviving, she was beginning to live. In that moment, she wasn't trading bread for matches anymore. She was trading hopelessness for the promise of a brighter tomorrow, led by the cowboy who believed in her when she could scarcely believe in herself. And under the blanket of stars, Clara understood that life could be more than just a struggle. With Jake's encouragement, she could take chances, chase dreams, and maybe reclaim a sense of home. It wasn't just about the bread anymore. It was about finding warmth, friendship, and hope in the most unexpected places. The crackle of firewood mingled with the biting chill of the night air, illuminating the faces of the lost and weary. Clara crouched beside a fragile flame she had managed to kindle with a few precious matches. Each flicker danced desperately, giving off heat and a momentary glow, casting shadows that whispered secrets of her solitary existence. In the small town of Cedar Hollow, survival became her daily challenge, a delicate exchange of bread for warmth, a crushing cycle of trading scraps to get by. The world outside her crumbling sanctuary bristled with life as families walked past, carrying laughter and hope like precious cargo. She was invisible to them, just another whisper in the wind, clinging to life's edge, hoping for a break in the storm. It was the early evening of Friday when the air thickened with the energy of the town preparing for its annual rodeo. Music filled the streets, a lively tune that echoed promises of joy and excitement. Clara could hear distant cheers, a chorus of merriment that danced through her mind, tantalizingly close but forever just out of reach. Gazing longingly toward the commotion, she wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. She felt the heaviness of her bread bag against her side, its contents barely enough to sustain her for another couple of days, but she had learned the art of survival. In exchange for a few crusts, she could barter for matches, the tiny flickers of light that guided her through the long, dark nights. Each exchange carved deeper lines into her spirit, and the shadows around her seemed to mock her attempts to survive. But that night, everything shifted. As she huddled near her flickering flame, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure making his way through the crowded street. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that cast a shadow over his face, but the sun glinted off the silver spurs on his boots with each confident step. He strode with purpose, a cowboy seemingly dropped into her life from another world, a world of adventure, of laughter, of freedom. The crowd parted for him as if he commanded some invisible force. Clara felt an inexplicable tug in her chest, an urge to reach out. Would he see her? Would he stop? But he passed by, lost in the rhythm of life that coursed through Cedar Hollow, and Clara sank back down, the flicker of hope dimming alongside her fire. As he turned the corner and ducked into a lively saloon filled with raucous laughter and clinking glasses, Clara felt a pang of longing. She knew all too well what it meant to be alone, even in a crowd. The warmth of companionship felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of what she could never have. Just then, a gust of wind swept through the alley. It sent a shiver down her spine and extinguished her flame. Clara gasped, her heart dropping. That small light had been her refuge, and now it flickered into blackness, much like her prospects. With trembling fingers, she pulled out a match, struck it against the rough surface, and panicked as she struggled to keep the tiny light alive long enough to rekindle the fire. Just as she thought all hope was lost, she felt a sudden presence beside her. The cowboy's voice boomed, rich like coffee and warm as fresh bread. Clara looked up, startled. He had returned, kneeling beside her, almost blocking out the cold wind with his broad frame. She stammered, unsure whether to trust this new figure who had stepped so boldly into her life. "No need to be shy," he said, grinning. With the ease of someone accustomed to working with their hands, he created a small shelter around her dying flame. Clara watched in awe as he adjusted the twigs and arranged the wood with an expert touch. A spark ignited, and soon the fire crackled back to life, sending flickers of warmth radiating toward her. Clara couldn't hold back the quiver in her voice. "Not today," he said, his eyes crinkling in a way that made him appear genuine. "Clara," she replied quietly, still a little skeptical but also somewhat enchanted. "What brings you to this side of town, Clara?" Jake leaned back, propping himself on one arm while the flames illuminated his rugged features. Clara's heart raced. Should she tell him the truth? She considered the words carefully, spinning a web of hope and honesty. I was watching. Jake's expression softened, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. She nodded, surprised by the question. For a moment she hesitated. Here was this charismatic cowboy with an open heart and strong hands, inviting her to share the weight of her world. I used to have a little farm, it was beautiful, with fields of flowers and a garden that burst with life. But then the drought came and everything dried up. Jake leaned forward, his gaze holding hers. Let's change that, he declared. Her breath caught in her throat. I don't know anyone there. What if? No what ifs, Jake interrupted, a seriousness in his tone. You've survived too much already. Clara weighed his words. In his eyes, she saw what she had thought impossible, a chance for connection, a moment away from pain. With a deep breath, she nodded. As they walked toward the vibrancy of the rodeo, Clara felt a strange mix of excitement and trepidation. A flicker of curiosity ignited within her. Faces passed by, people laughing and cheering, but before she could retreat into herself, Jake's steady presence anchored her. The sweet aroma of fried dough and roasted meats filled the air, a tantalizing reminder of joy. Once inside the crowded venue, the roar of the crowd enveloped her. Clara's heart raced, not just from the chaos around them, but from the wild thrill of feeling alive. Jake showed her around, introducing her to familiar faces, each one greeting him like an old friend. Laughter and warm smiles cradled her in a comforting embrace that she hadn't known in years. As the rodeo began, she stood at the edge of the arena, mesmerized. The cowboys rode wild broncos and lassoed spinning calves with precision and bravery. Clara lost herself in the rhythm of the event, her heart pounding in time with the hooves thundering against the ground. Jake exclaimed, his excitement contagious. He nudged Clara's shoulder, prompting her to lean in closer. She felt giddy, a bubbly sensation spreading through her like warmth on a winter's night. See the way he rides, he said, pointing to a young cowboy who had just scored high on his bull ride. Clara's laughter escaped like the bits of light she had been missing. Jake shouted as he playfully hoisted her onto his shoulders. Breathless with astonishment, she clung onto him, taking in the swirling sights and sounds from a view she had never known. The night unfolded like a beautiful tapestry, woven with new friendships and laughter. Clara felt the past dissolve slightly, the weight of her struggles lightening with every cheerful shout and encouraging cheer. Each moment with Jake breathed life into her spirit, and she realized he hadn't just offered her warmth that night, he had illuminated the darkness within her. As the festivities carried on, there was a moment when the musical notes of a folk tune filled the air. Jake turned to her, this charming cowboy with a heart that seemed bigger than the Texas sky. Me, Clara exclaimed, caught off guard. Jake grinned, pulling her into the swirl of feet moving to the music. She hesitated, her heart racing with nerves, but his laughter was inviting. Before she knew it, Clara found herself twirling, lost in a whirlwind of joy she hadn't thought possible. Time slipped away, the music wrapped itself around them, and she began to let go, laughter filling the air as they danced amid the throng. She felt unshackled from the burden of her past and alive in the present. Toward the end of the night, beneath the stars, Clara whispered, "Thank you for bringing me here, Jake." Jake paused, looking deep into her eyes. "You deserve this, Clara. You've got a fire inside you that shines brighter than any stars up there." They exchanged a vulnerable silence, two souls connected in a moment of sheer honesty. Clara felt the twinkling hope rekindle within her heart. For the first time in a long time, she envisioned a future beyond survival, one filled with possibility, warmth, and the light of friendship. As they left the rodeo hand in hand, the cowboy who had brought her in didn't just save her from the chill of loneliness, he had reignited the flicker of hope inside her. And as they walked into the night, the shadows around Clara began to dissolve, allowing her to step into a world that promised joy, adventure, and the courage to embrace whatever came next. The wind howled through the emptiness of the alley, dragging with it the smells of burnt wood and the distant laughter of children at play. Clara crouched beside a flickering flame, her heart racing as she struck the match against the rough surface. Every spark felt precious, a fleeting moment of warmth in a world that often felt cold and uninviting. Tonight, she could barely afford the scraps of food she had grown accustomed to trading for matches. She had just enough bread left to bargain. Each day, she wandered the streets of Cedar Hollow, offering a piece of crust for a single measly match. The bakery always looked so inviting, with its rustic charm and the scent of fresh loaves wafting through the air. But they didn't see her, they saw only the outskirts of their cozy little world. To them, she was just a shadow flitting past, a reminder of how quickly things could fall apart. Clara pressed her back against the cold wall, feeling her bones ache from the chill that had seeped into her very soul. She watched as townsfolk bustled about, laughter echoing off the cobblestones, laughter she could barely remember feeling. Those bustling figures seemed alive with adventure, while she felt like a ghost, haunted by a life once rich with promise. But tonight would be different, she thought. Something in the air hinted at change. As she took a deep breath, trying to capture that fleeting warmth of hope, she caught sight of something moving in the distance. A silhouette on horseback, galloping fast toward the town, drawing the attention of everyone around. The figure was tall, clad in denim and leather, a wide-brimmed hat casting shadows over a rugged face. The cowboy dismounted with a rough grace that spoke of years on the trail. The townspeople turned, pulling back from their laughter, their conversations hesitant as the stranger approached. Clara strained to see his face, curiosity piquing her interest. There was something different about him, something that tugged at her heart. His voice rang out, strong and confident. He swept his hat off with a flourish, a smile playing on his lips. "I'm Jake, and I'm just passing through this fine town." He was met with laughter from the townsfolk, who seemed to lean into his energy like a moth drawn to a flame. Clara, however, stayed back, clutching her bag of bread tightly, fearing any connection with the warmth radiating from Jake. Yet a small stir of hope began to bloom in her heart, trailing behind the cold dread that had dominated for so long. Jake turned, scanning the crowd as if looking for something, and that's when his eyes met hers. For a heartbeat, the world slowed. Clara felt exposed like the flames of her tiny fire, small but stubbornly alive. He closed the distance between them, his presence a comforting wall against the chaos of the world outside. "Hey there," he said, crouching to her level. Clara hesitated. People didn't typically notice her. I was just waiting for someone," she replied, half hoping he wouldn't press her for more. "That's so." With that smile, he took a piece of bread from her bag. It was a thin crust, barely enough to fill her stomach. "Mind if I share this with you?" Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. He shrugged, genuine warmth radiating from him. No use in good food going to waste. She felt a mix of emotions she hadn't experienced in ages: curiosity, hunger, and something akin to longing. With a shaky breath, she nodded. With a swift motion, Clara followed Jake through the crowd, her heart buzzing like a hummingbird. They reached his camp on the outskirts of town, where lanterns twinkled like stars against the blackness. Clara sat beside a small fire he had prepared, her stomach growling as the scent of jerky wafted through the air. Jake asked casually, tossing a piece of jerky into the fire. Flames danced upwards, licking at the sky. "It's not much," Clara admitted, her voice quiet. Jake frowned, his eyes turning serious. "It shouldn't be like that." "I've been doing it for a while now," she mumbled, her gaze dropping to the ground. "This town," he leaned closer, the firelight illuminating his strong features. "What if I told you there's more out there?" She lifted her gaze, curiosity piqued. "I'm a wanderer. I ride from town to town, chasing adventure, helping out where I can." He spread his arms as if the expansive landscape were laid out before them. "You can break free from this cycle, Clara." Feelings of fear and exhilaration warred within her. She whispered, the realization already hitting her. She had grown comfortable in her suffering. Everyone fails at something, but not trying. He held her gaze, determination shining in his eyes. For the first time, her heart beat a little faster with possibility. "By living," Jake said with a smile. "Why don't you come with me tomorrow? A rodeo's in town, full of excitement. Trust me, it'll be good." She hesitated, but felt something resonating within. Then let me introduce you to some friends," he replied, a brief flash of warmth touching his expression. As night deepened, Clara felt the walls she had built around herself beginning to crumble. The shackles of loneliness and despair loosened, and she began to wonder, could she rewrite her story? So under that canopy of stars, Clara made a decision that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The next day dawned bright and clear, and Clara could hear the distant sounds of laughter and excitement wafting through the air. As she and Jake approached the rodeo, her heart raced with anticipation and anxiety. The vibrant colors of the rodeo flashed before her eyes, pulling her into a world filled with energy. They entered the lively arena, the smell of popcorn and cotton candy swirling around them. Bright banners flapped in the warm breeze, and Clara felt her spirits lift with the rapture of the place. Jake's contagious enthusiasm bolstered her courage as they wove through the crowd. Jake pointed toward a rider expertly lassoing a calf. Clara clapped along with the audience, her worries drifting away like the bits of hay scattered underfoot. He urged, pulling her toward the action. They climbed up into the stands, and as she sat beside him, Clara felt herself melting into the warmth of the moment, caught in a weave of newfound joy and laughter. For the first time in forever, she didn't feel invisible. She laughed, she cheered. The music pulsed through her veins, and she felt like part of something larger than herself. Jake remained by her side, his presence a steady anchor amid the chaos of the crowded venue. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of burnt orange and purple, Jake leaned closer. "You're glowing, Clara, look at you." A mixture of gratitude and thrill surged through her. "I never thought, see, things can change." Breathless with excitement, Clara laughed with a lightness she had almost forgotten existed. The shadows of the past receded. All she saw was brave and beautiful possibility. As the night fell into darkness, laughter filled the air like stars scattered across the vast sky. The rodeo lights began to twinkle, illuminating the excitement that filled the hearts of those around them. Clara felt free, truly free, enveloped by the whirlwind of friendship and celebration. Jake watched her, eyes glimmering with pride. "Stick with me, Clara." Their laughter echoed against the backdrop of the roaring crowd, a testament to the transformative power of friendship. For Clara, every giggle, every cheer was a reminder that life didn't need to be a solitary confinement. She hadn't just met a cowboy, she had discovered resilience, hope, and laughter along the way. In that moment, Clara came to a breathtaking realization. The flame of her spirit had reignited, and she finally dared to spread her wings, chasing dreams and chasing light. With Jake beside her, what had once felt impossible was becoming a new adventure, one filled with boundless opportunities just waiting to unfold. The cold wind howled through the narrow alley, biting at Clara's cheeks as she sat on the pavement, clutching a few crusts of stale bread in her thin, trembling hands. The world around her felt like a blur, just shadows passing, laughter echoing off the cobbled streets while she remained hidden, a forgotten soul in a bustling town. Each time she glanced toward the bakery, the warm, golden glow streaming through the windows reminded her of comfort she hadn't known in a long time. In the crackling night, she exchanged her meager bread for the smallest of luxuries, matches. Clara struck another match, the flame flickering to life just long enough to cradle in her hands. It felt like a tiny spark of hope in her darkened world. As it danced, she caught her reflection in the darkness, a girl worn down by struggle, but within her, a flicker of resilience remained. The matches were her only way to fight off the chill of the night, to illuminate the shadows that threatened to swallow her whole. Her heart raced as she took a deep breath and used the flame to warm her numbed fingers. She had learned to survive on so little, trading her bread to keep the flicker of light alive, but it came at a cost that weighed heavily on her spirit. This life seemed like an unbreakable cycle, each day passing in an endless quest for survival, buried beneath layers of loneliness, but tonight felt different. The town stirred with excitement. The annual rodeo was just around the corner. Loud cheers and distant music filled the air, and Clara felt an invitation to warmth and joy that she desperately craved. She peeked around the corner, caught by the vibrant atmosphere as lights flashed and laughter rang out like a sweet melody. Her heart pounded in her chest, yearning to be a part of it, if only for a moment. That's when she saw him, a tall figure riding into the heart of Cedar Hollow on a chestnut horse, the silhouette of a cowboy framed against the glowing horizon. He was striking with a grin that seemed to echo the warmth of the town around him. This cowboy exuded confidence and purpose. As he dismounted, the townsfolk gathered, their eyes bright with fascination. Clara watched, caught in that magnetic energy that radiated from him. He called, his voice rich and inviting. Clara felt the thrill of possibility wash over her. She had been invisible for so long, a ghost drifting through life, but this man, this cowboy, was something different. He continued, his eyes sparkling as he scanned the crowd. A ripple of excitement surged through the townsfolk. Clara's heart beat faster. Would he notice her? Would he see the girl who had been lost in the throes of despair? She felt a spark in her chest, but it flickered out as she huddled deeper into herself, holding her bread tighter. Would this cowboy even glance her way amid all that energy? And yet he did. His eyes found hers, piercing through the crowd, and for a moment the world faded around them. Clara felt the weight of his gaze, a steady warmth that enveloped her. He called, stepping toward her. In that moment, the whirlwind of the crowd stilled. I'm waiting, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He asked, kneeling to her level, the sincerity in his tone pulling her in. I don't know, just something more. He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Well, I've got a plan for more, he said, a spark of mischief in his eyes. Come join me for the rodeo tonight. I can't, Clara replied, a wave of doubt creeping in. Jake shrugged, his grin unwavering. You've got more than you think. She hesitated but felt the flicker of hope reigniting within her. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, as if she could truly be seen. Okay, she said, her heart racing with excitement. As they walked toward the rodeo, Clara felt the role of a lifetime unfold around her. It was as if she had traded her old life for something much more vibrant. Laughter and music enveloped them, drowning out the echoes of her past struggles. A canopy of lights danced above her head, and the energy seemed to pulse through her veins. Jake led her into the heart of the festivities, introducing her to friends who welcomed her with open arms and warm smiles. Clara felt the weight of solitude lifting, replaced by a sense of belonging that had long eluded her. Together, they cheered as the rodeo began, each thrilling event sending pulses of excitement through the air. She watched cowboys rope calves and ride wild horses, feeling alive in a way she hadn't believed possible. Every cheer, every clap fueled her soul, and in the chaos of the crowd, she began to lose herself in the thrill. It was all so infusing. Each second felt alive with possibility, making her forget the ache of her old life. See, Jake exclaimed, his voice booming with laughter. He caught her eye, that same fire she had seen earlier shining brightly. In that moment, Clara felt a connection that transcended words, an unspoken understanding that ignited the warmth in her heart. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, she turned to Jake, her heart pounding like the hooves of the horses racing across the arena. I can't believe I'm here, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I thought I had lost everything, but this feels good, he said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face, sending a shiver down her spine. You deserve this joy, Clara. With that simple gesture, something shifted within her. She felt seen more than just a girl trading bread for matches. She felt like an individual worthy and alive, The night stretched on like a beautiful tapestry, woven with laughter and the sounds of celebration, and Clara found herself dancing under the stars. She twirled, letting the music envelop her, feeling every note seep into her bones. But amid the exhilaration, fear crept in once more. Would this escape be fleeting? Could she truly step away from the shadows and embrace a new future? She felt a pang of uncertainty, afraid that it could all slip away before she had a chance to grasp it. Just then, as if sensing her turmoil, Jake took her hand, leading her to a quieter corner. He asked softly, concern etched in his features. "I don't know," Clara admitted, her voice a whisper. "What if this all disappears?" Jake squeezed her hand tightly. "You'll never be that girl again. You've tasted life, Clara. You felt the warmth of happiness. No matter what happens, don't forget this part of yourself." Tears filled her eyes. "I just showed you a glimpse of what could be," he replied, his smile bright amidst the moonlit shadows. The conversation lingered in the cool night air, wrapping Clara in a cocoon of hope. They returned to the festivities, but something had shifted inside her. She felt lighter, as if the shadows holding her back had begun to dissolve under the brightness of new experiences. As they continued to enjoy the rodeo, Clara began to let go of her fears, embracing the laughter that surrounded her. She found joy in the small moments, sharing stories, cheering for the cowboys, and even feeling the thrill of living in the present. The crackling fire of hope ignited her spirit. She no longer felt confined by the struggle of her past. Hours passed, and the night grew deeper, vibrant with life. They settled in a spot beneath the stars, watching as fireworks exploded overhead, lighting up the sky in showers of color. Clara leaned back, eyes widened in wonder as she imagined her dreams bursting forth just like those fireworks. Jake asked, glancing at her with interest, his voice warm like the glow of embers. "I don't know," she replied slowly, taking a moment. "I used to dream of living on my farm again, surrounded by flowers and sun, and maybe I dreamed of being free." "That sounds beautiful," Jake said, nodding. The idea hung in the air, rich with possibility. Becoming anything you want, the artist, the traveler, the adventurer. The world out there is vast, you know. It doesn't have to be a farm or just surviving. Clara considered his words. Could she really break free from the cycle of despair? The flicker of hope that had long struggled to stay alive began to blaze brighter. "I want to try," she finally said, her voice steady with conviction. "Then let's figure it out together, step by step," Jake encouraged. He leaned in, emphasizing the sincerity in his gaze. As the night drew to a close, Clara realized she hadn't just traded bread for matches. She had started to trade the weight of her past for the lightness of her future. The desire for a brighter life whispered promises in her ear, promises she had almost forgotten. With Jake beside her, she felt courage build within her, a strength with roots reaching deep into her spirit. Every laughter, every cheer echoed memories that would guide her toward the life that awaited her, a life where dreams were not just flickers of light, but a blazing fire, burning brightly in the heart of a girl who longed to be more. The rodeo may have ended, but Clara's journey was just beginning. The warmth of connection and the thrill of possibility would stay with her long after the stars faded from view. The cold wind howled through the narrow alley, biting at Clara's cheeks as she sat on the pavement, clutching a few crusts of stale bread in her thin, trembling hands. The world around her felt like a blur, just shadows passing, laughter echoing off the cobbled streets while she remained hidden, a forgotten soul in a bustling town. Each time she glanced toward the bakery, the warm, golden glow streaming through the windows reminded her of comfort she hadn't known in a long time. In the crackling night, she exchanged her meager bread for the smallest of luxuries, matches. Clara struck another match, the flame flickering to life just long enough to cradle in her hands. It felt like a tiny spark of hope in her darkened world. As it danced, she caught her reflection in the darkness, a girl worn down by struggle, but within her, a flicker of resilience remained. The matches were her only way to fight off the chill of the night, to illuminate the shadows that threatened to swallow her whole. Her heart raced as she took a deep breath and used the flame to warm her numbed fingers. She had learned to survive on so little, trading her bread to keep the flicker of light alive, but it came at a cost that weighed heavily on her spirit. This life seemed like an unbreakable cycle, each day passing in an endless quest for survival, buried beneath layers of loneliness, but tonight felt different. The town stirred with excitement. The annual rodeo was just around the corner. Loud cheers and distant music filled the air, and Clara felt an invitation to warmth and joy that she desperately craved. She peeked around the corner, caught by the vibrant atmosphere as lights flashed and laughter rang out like a sweet melody. Her heart pounded in her chest, yearning to be a part of it, if only for a moment. That's when she saw him, a tall figure riding into the heart of Cedar Hollow on a chestnut horse, the silhouette of a cowboy framed against the glowing horizon. He was striking with a grin that seemed to echo the warmth of the town around him. As he dismounted, the townsfolk gathered, their eyes bright with fascination. Clara watched, caught in that magnetic energy that radiated from him. He called, his voice rich and inviting. Clara felt the thrill of possibility wash over her. She had been invisible for so long, a ghost drifting through life, but this man, this cowboy, was something different. He continued, his eyes sparkling as he scanned the crowd. A ripple of excitement surged through the townsfolk. Clara's heart beat faster. Would he notice her? Would he see the girl who had been lost in the throes of despair? She felt a spark in her chest, but it flickered out as she huddled deeper into herself, holding her breath tighter. Would this cowboy even glance her way amid all that energy? And yet he did. His eyes found hers, piercing through the crowd, and for a moment the world faded around them. Clara felt the weight of his gaze, a steady warmth that enveloped her. He called, stepping toward her. In that moment, the whirlwind of the crowd stilled. I'm waiting, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He asked, kneeling to her level, the sincerity in his tone pulling her in. I don't know, just something more. He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Well, I've got a plan for more, he said, a spark of mischief in his eyes. Come join me for the rodeo tonight. I can't, Clara replied, a wave of doubt creeping in. Jake shrugged, his grin unwavering. You've got more than you think. She hesitated but felt the flicker of hope reigniting within her. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, as if she could truly be seen. Okay, she said, her heart racing with excitement. As they walked toward the rodeo, Clara felt the role of a lifetime unfold around her. It was as if she had traded her old life for something much more vibrant. Laughter and music enveloped them, drowning out the echoes of her past struggles. The canopy of lights danced above her head, and the energy seemed to pulse through her veins. Jake led her into the heart of the festivities, introducing her to friends who welcomed her with open arms and warm smiles. Clara felt the weight of solitude lifting, replaced by a sense of belonging that had long eluded her. Together, they cheered as the rodeo began, each thrilling event sending pulses of excitement through the air. She watched cowboys rope calves and ride wild horses, feeling alive in a way she hadn't believed possible. Every cheer, every clap fueled her soul, and in the chaos of the crowd, she began to lose herself in the thrill. It was all so infusing. Each second felt alive with possibility, making her forget the ache of her old life. See, Jake exclaimed, his voice booming with laughter. He caught her eye, that same fire she had seen earlier shining brightly. In that moment, Clara felt a connection that transcended words, an unspoken understanding that ignited the warmth in her heart. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, she turned to Jake, her heart pounding like the hooves of the horses racing across the arena. I can't believe I'm here, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I thought I had lost everything, but this feels good, he said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face, sending a shiver down her spine. You deserve this joy, Clara. With that simple gesture, something shifted within her. She felt seen more than just a girl trading bread for matches. She felt like an individual worthy and alive. The night stretched on like a beautiful tapestry, woven with laughter and the sounds of celebration, and Clara found herself dancing under the stars. She twirled, letting the music envelop her, feeling every note seep into her bones. But amid the exhilaration, fear crept in once more. Would this escape be fleeting? Could she truly step away from the shadows and embrace a new future? She felt a pang of uncertainty, afraid that it could all slip away before she had a chance to grasp it. Just then, as if sensing her turmoil, Jake took her hand, leading her to a quieter corner. He asked softly, concern etched in his features. I don't know, Clara admitted, her voice a whisper. What if this all disappears? Jake squeezed her hand tightly. You'll never be that girl again. You've tasted life, Clara. You felt the warmth of happiness. No matter what happens, don't forget this part of yourself. Tears filled her eyes. I just showed you a glimpse of what could be, he replied, his smile bright amidst the moonlit shadows. The conversation lingered in the cool night air, wrapping Clara in a cocoon of hope. They returned to the festivities, but something had shifted inside her. She felt lighter, as if the shadows holding her back had begun to dissolve under the brightness of new experiences. As they continued to enjoy the rodeo, Clara began to let go of her fears, embracing the laughter that surrounded her. She found joy in the small moments, sharing stories, cheering for the cowboys, and even feeling the thrill of living in the present. The crackling fire of hope ignited her spirit. She no longer felt confined by the struggle of her past. Hours passed and the night grew deeper, vibrant with life. They settled in a spot beneath the stars, watching as fireworks exploded overhead, lighting up the sky in showers of color. Clara leaned back, eyes widened in wonder as she imagined her dreams bursting forth just like those fireworks. Jake asked, glancing at her with interest, his voice warm like the glow of embers. I don't know, she replied slowly, taking a moment. I used to dream of living on my farm again, surrounded by flowers and sun, and maybe I dreamed of being free. That sounds beautiful, Jake said, nodding. The idea hung in the air, rich with possibility. Becoming anything you want, the artist, the traveler, the adventurer. The world out there is vast, it doesn't have to be a farm or just surviving. Clara considered his words. Could she really break free from the cycle of despair? The flicker of hope that had long struggled to stay alive began to blaze brighter. I want to try, she finally said, her voice steady with conviction. Then let's figure it out together, step by step, Jake encouraged. He leaned in, emphasizing the sincerity in his gaze. As the night drew to a close, Clara realized she hadn't just traded bread for matches. She had started to trade the weight of her past for the lightness of her future. The desire for a brighter life whispered promises in her, promises she had almost forgotten. With Jake beside her, she felt courage build within her, a strength with roots reaching deep into her spirit. Every laughter, every cheer echoed memories that would guide her toward the life that awaited her. A life where dreams were not just flickers of light, but a blazing fire, burning brightly in the heart of a girl who longed to be more. The rodeo may have ended, but Clara's journey was just beginning. The warmth of connection and the thrill of possibility would stay with her long after the stars faded from view. She was ready to step into her own light, to follow the path that stretched endlessly before her, holding tantalizing wonders just out of reach but entirely within her grasp. The moon hung high in the midnight sky, casting silvery shadows on the cracked pavement of Cedar Hollow. Clara huddled in a darkened alley, her thin fingers clutching a few stale pieces of bread. The chill of the night seeped into her bones, reminding her of the long hours spent trading those scraps for something more precious: matches. Each tiny flame they could ignite offered warmth, a brief flicker of light against the consuming darkness. Tonight, the world seemed especially cold. Clara rubbed her arms, trying to stave off the creeping chill as she listened to the distant sounds of laughter and celebration. The annual rodeo was in full swing just a few blocks away, and every cheer echoed like a reminder of everything she had lost. Once she had been part of the vibrant community, but like the bread she now traded, her spirit had become stale, reduced to mere survival. She struck a match, the flame sputtering to life, illuminating her face for just a moment. As the warm light danced in her tired eyes, she imagined a time when life was filled with sunshine instead of shadows. Memories of laughter, of friends and family, floated in and out of her mind like wisps of smoke. Just as she was about to extinguish the match, a figure appeared at the end of the alley. Tall and broad-shouldered, the man emerged from the glow of the streetlights, his silhouette painted against the short bursts of light trapped in the darkness. He carried himself with a confidence that demanded attention. Clara's heart quickened. He seemed out of place amidst the maze of alleyways and remnants of life she had grown so accustomed to. He approached slowly, his cowboy hat obscuring the details of his face. As he drew nearer, the light flickered, catching the blue of his eyes, a color as rich and deep as the summer sky. It was a gaze that felt warm, as if it could melt the ice of her solitude. "Hey there," he called out, his voice smooth like a river flowing over stones. Clara hesitated, surprised by the question. "Just waiting," she mumbled, unsure of how to respond. He came closer, kneeling beside her with genuine curiosity etched on his features. She shrugged, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle over her like an unwelcome blanket. I don't know." He smiled, and it was a real, infectious grin that lit up his whole face. "Name's Jake." Clara clasped her bread tightly, suddenly feeling vulnerable under his gaze. "I can't go out there," she protested, gesturing toward the sounds of joy spilling from the rodeo. "Why not?" He extended his hand, an invitation glowing with promise. "I could use a partner in crime tonight." Clara looked down at the ragged clothes she wore, the stains betraying her hardship. "I don't know, Clara," he said gently, his voice wrapping around her like a warm blanket. "You've got everything you need, your story, your spirit, that's what matters." Something within her shifted. The flame of hope flickered back to life, hurling away the ghosts of doubt. She met his gaze and found a flicker of understanding shining back. Clara stood slowly, placing her hand in his. "Okay," she whispered, feeling as if she had just made the most daring choice of her life. Together, they walked toward the rodeo. The closer they got, the more the energy enveloped her. Voices melded into a symphony of excitement, and the scent of popcorn and grilled meat wafted through the air, igniting memories of joyous gatherings she hadn't experienced in ages. Each step felt surreal, as if the ground underneath her could transform into something solid, grounding her in a reality where anything was possible. As they entered the arena, Clara felt a rush of adrenaline that almost made her dizzy. Jake introduced her to his friends, cheerful faces that welcomed her with open arms. With every introduction, each infectious laugh, Clara felt the walls she had built slowly beginning to crumble. Jake exclaimed, pulling her into the throng of rodeo festivities. Clara's heart raced with exhilaration. In that moment, she was no longer the girl who traded bread for matches. She was becoming someone new. They cheered for brave cowboys who rode bucking broncos as the crowd roared with excitement. Clara found herself clapping along, her voice joining in the chorus as she felt the energy swirling around her. Each thrilling event pulsed through her veins, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she laughed with abandon. "See. This is living," Jake shouted, sunlight catching the strands of his hair as he turned to her. "I know," she replied, excitement bubbling up inside her. Of course you can," he said, gesturing toward the thrilling action before them. "Life's too short to be stuck in the shadows." As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting everything in hues of gold and crimson, Clara felt like she was transforming. The shadows of her past evaporated with every cheer of the crowd, and she reveled in her newfound sense of belonging. They moved through the arena, dancing in a sea of bodies filled with laughter, joy, and unrestrained passion. Jake urged, grabbing her hand and leading her closer to the action. Clara's heart raced as they pushed through the crowd, exhilaration thrumming in the air around them. Once at the front, Clara watched as cowboys showcased their skills, each one more daring than the last. The wind whipped through her hair as she felt the raw energy, the thrill that came with every dangerous turn, and she felt alive. It wasn't just the rodeo, it was the life surrounding it, the vibrancy of hope and possibility that filled the air. "Clara," Jake called over the cacophony of cheers, his voice bright with enthusiasm. She shouted back, her voice carrying over the noise. It felt like she was shedding another layer of her past, standing in the light of everything she had yearned for. As the night deepened, the fireworks began, exploding in the sky, brilliant bursts of color reflecting the excitement surging through Clara's heart. She stood transfixed, feeling as if the entire world had opened up in front of her. Each explosion felt like a promise of what could be, an invitation to embrace a future beyond just survival. Jake turned to her, an earnest expression on his chiseled features. "Clara, you've got to keep chasing this feeling," she murmured, fear creeping in again like an unwelcome guest. Jake's gaze softened, his supportive energy enveloping her. "Then you get back up. You've already shown that you're a survivor. This isn't just a one-time thrill, it's a path you can walk." In that moment, Clara understood what he meant. The journey she'd been on had shaped her, but it didn't define her. She could choose to embrace the warmth of hope, to step into her future with courage. She felt the flicker of that inner fire growing stronger with each heartbeat, bolstered by Jake's unwavering belief in her. As the fireworks faded, leaving trails of smoke against the starlit sky, Clara leaned into Jake, feeling an undeniable connection. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered, allowing vulnerability to flow through her. "Thank you for letting me in," he replied, his voice sincere and warm. "You're stronger than you think, Clara." With each hour spent at the rodeo, Clara felt the bonds of friendship solidifying, an invisible thread weaving her into a tapestry of a new life. As they stood beneath the vastness of the night sky, she realized this was only the beginning. For too long, she'd been a spectator in her own life, but now she was ready to embrace everything that lay ahead. As the night wore on and the festivities faded, she took a moment to glance at her surroundings, people beckoning their friends, the vibrant colors of the rodeo, and the laughter that filled the air. Clara closed her eyes, breathing deeply, savoring the moment that sparked a new beginning, a promise of something much greater than herself. Jake asked, watching her with those reassuring eyes. "Anywhere," she replied, newfound courage shining in her voice. "Everywhere." And with that single statement, Clara's life began to shift in ways she never thought possible. It wasn't just about escaping the past, it was about embracing the future. Together with her newfound friend, she began her transition from a girl who traded bread for matches to someone willing to chase after dreams and possibilities. As they left the rodeo, hand in hand beneath the glow of a million stars, Clara felt the warmth spreading within her, an ember ignited by hope, now roaring to life. Everything she had dreamed of, everything she believed she had lost, was finally within reach. The world was vast, waiting, and with every step she took alongside Jake, she felt the shadows retreat further and further into the past. Freedom lay ahead, so did adventure, and Clara was ready to embrace every moment of it. The night was cold, the kind that seeped into your bones and stole your breath. Clara hunched in the shadows of a worn alleyway, clutching her small sack of stale bread like it was a lifeline. Every evening she traded pieces of bread for matches, lighting flickers of hope against the overwhelming darkness of her situation. The matches were small comforts, but could barely keep the deep chill at bay. With each passing day, it felt more like a losing game. She watched as families strolled past her, warm laughter pouring from their lips, their hands holding steaming cups of cocoa and fresh bread. Clara's stomach growled audibly, but she clenched her jaw and pressed back against the wall. She was part of the background now, an invisible figure against the vibrancy of the life bustling around her. Tonight, however, there was something different in the air. As she shifted her position, she heard distant music and shouts of excitement. The annual rodeo was in full swing, its energy eerie in its vibrancy. Suddenly she felt a flicker of longing. She wished she could be one with that crowd, where the atmosphere was electric and the warmth palpable. And then she saw him. A cowboy rode into the heart of Cedar Hollow on a chestnut horse, the kind of character that seemed straight out of a fantasy, muscles honed from hard work, a wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his determined gaze. The crowd around him erupted into applause, and Clara felt a spark ignite in her chest. She watched as he dismounted with ease and turned, greeting everyone with the confidence of a man who knew his own worth. He called, his voice resonant and rich. With every word he drew Clara in like a moth to flame, an electric current humming between them even from afar. A gasp of excitement rippled through the crowd. Clara's heart raced. She had been stuck in her own shadows for so long. What would it feel like to be part of that roaring crowd, to hear the cheers and feel the heat of the lights? As the cowboy stepped away from his horse, he locked eyes with her. For a moment, Clara felt time stand still. Those piercing blue eyes held the weight of 1,000 stories, and she found herself rooting deeply within them. She wanted desperately to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be one of the stories he would tell. He started walking toward her. Every footstep seemed to resonate like a drumbeat in her chest. he called, a grin blossoming on his face like sunshine breaking through clouds. Clara's cheeks flushed as if exposed under his gaze. "Just waiting," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt small, inadequate in the wake of his vigor. He approached, his presence warm and buoyant. Her heart raced. She glanced at her bread, her stomach twisting in knots. "For something," she said, not entirely sure what she meant. He said, gesturing toward the rodeo, the sounds and lights beckoning like a siren's song. The doubts bubbled up from the depths of her insecurities. Would she really belong? Where would she fit among the jubilant throngs? He chuckled, his laugh deep and inviting. "Who cares about clothes?" Before she could think it through, Clara felt herself nodding. "Okay," she said, almost breathless. As they walked toward the rodeo, Clara felt fear and excitement jostling for space in her chest. The music grew louder, the laughter bounced warmly off the walls, and she took a deep breath, attempting to soak in every sensation as they approached the entrance. Together, they wove through the crowd, Jake introducing her to his friends, their faces sweet with smiles. Clara couldn't believe the way warmth enveloped her. The sensation was overwhelming, yet intoxicating. Once inside the arena, the vibrant colors and roaring cheers became a kaleidoscope of life. Clara couldn't contain her exhilaration as she watched cowboys demonstrate their skills, her heart racing with every wild ride and every cheering crowd. Each moment pulled her deeper into a world where she no longer felt like just a shadow. She felt alive. Jake shouted, pointing at a cowboy riding a bull that bucked violently. Clara clapped her hands, energy coursing through her. She hadn't felt this alive in years. The excitement mounted. Clara caught sight of the gleaming lights overhead, sparkling like stars against the canvas of night. The laughter, the cheers, all of it ignited something within her. She twirled in glee, losing herself in the joyous chaos that surrounded them. "See," Jake said, laughing alongside her, his eyes bright with all the possibilities. They danced freely amidst the clamor of excitement. Clara couldn't help but think how far she had come from trading bread for matches, how real freedom felt. But through the exhilaration, old doubts crept in. What if this disappeared? What if the magic of this night faded into an ordinary existence once more? As soon as that thought emerged, it wrapped itself around her heart like a weight. She wanted to scream, to run, to grasp onto this feeling with everything she had. Sensing her change in energy, Jake turned to her, concern etched onto his handsome features. I don't want this to end," she confessed, the vulnerability spilling from her lips. He moved closer, a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You've come too far to go back. Life is all about risks and chances, Clara." Clara met his gaze, the sincerity of his words shimmering with hope. In that moment, the shackles that had anchored her heart began to loosen. Maybe she could reclaim that part of herself she thought was lost forever. With a sudden burst of courage, Clara took a deep breath and leaned in. "Let's do this," she said, steeling herself. They plunged back into the vibrant chaos, dancing to the music and laughing like they were the only two people in the world. Jake lifted her onto his shoulders as the crowd roared, and Clara squealed with delight as the world spun around her. She was no longer just Clara, the girl who traded bread for matches. She was a whirlwind of joy, a beacon of life. As the night deepened, fireworks erupted in the sky, exploding in hues of red, blue, and gold, each spark a testament to her awakening. Clara watched with wide eyes, feeling the emotions rise and swell within her, a cavalcade of dreams bursting forth just like those fireworks. For the first time, she envisioned life as an adventure, not a burden. Jake called, his voice full of excitement as he pointed to the dazzling display overhead. In that moment, overwhelmed by emotion, Clara didn't just feel alive, she felt limitless. The crowd erupted into applause and every cheer lifted her higher. This was where she belonged, among friends, laughter, and adventures waiting to be embraced. "Thank you for believing in me," Clara said breathlessly, leaning into Jake as the fireworks faded, leaving only trails of smoke against the blanket of stars. "You've always had it in you," he replied, that warmth in his voice making her heart swell. As the music continued to swirl around them, Clara realized that she had traded far more than just bread for matches on that fateful day. She had exchanged uncertainty for the light of connection and hope. That spark had ignited a fire deep within her, a passion to claim her life back. As the rodeo came to an end, with the crowd slowly dispersing, Clara felt Jake's hand gently squeeze hers. He asked, his voice a soft beacon of encouragement. "I want to chase dreams," she said, feeling the weight of that statement settle in her heart. "I don't want to trade scraps anymore." Jake smiled wide, pride shining in his eyes. Together they walked toward the horizon, the softness of the night enfolding them as they stepped out of the rodeo and into a world ripe with possibilities. With every confident stride, Clara felt herself shedding old fears, uncertainty evaporating like morning fog under the sun. From that night on, Clara transformed. She began to explore, to embrace life with an adventurous spirit. It wasn't always easy. There were days when shadows lingered at the edges, tempting her to retreat. But with Jake by her side, she learned to harness the light inside, using it to push through every challenge that came her way. She wandered through fields and forests, climbed mountains, and tasted salt in the ocean breeze. Each new venture reminded her she was far more than the girl who once only traded bread for warmth. Clara lived purposefully, excitement lighting her path, and every little victory fueled her soul. As time passed, the hunger for connection and joy twisted into something profound, a calling to give back. Clara began volunteering at shelters, sharing warmth and hope with those who struggled like she once had. The pieces of bread and matches became a gateway for her to open doors for others, to help them see their own spark. One evening, as she stood in a glow of community warmth, Clara reflected on her journey, the cowboy who had nudged her toward a new life, and the sparks that turned into fireworks. She realized that life was a series of exchanges, not just bread for matches, but kindness for kindness, love for love, and support for support. And as she looked out at the faces lit by joy and hope, Clara knew her story was just beginning. She had stepped out of the shadows, embracing the light with outstretched arms, ready to dance among stars, forever chasing the dreams that had once felt so far away. The cowboy had brought her in, but it was she who chose to live. The cold wind howled through the streets of Cedar Hollow, a town deeply shadowed by the burdens of everyday life. Clara huddled in a darkened alley, clutching her meager bag of stale bread like a lifeline. Each evening she made a desperate trade, exchanging pieces of that bread for fragile matches. In a world stripped of warmth, those tiny flickers were her only solace. But tonight was different. The air vibrated with excitement, thick with the smells of popcorn and roasted meat wafting from the nearby fairgrounds. The annual rodeo was in full swing. Clara could hear distant laughter and music breaking through the night. As she sat there, her heart ached with longing, a wish to break free from the shadows of her loneliness and join the vibrant life outside her alley. She struck a match and watched the flame dance in the dark, illuminating her gaunt face for just a moment. In this fleeting light, she saw more than just hardship, she saw possibility. But how could she be part of that world, the world filled with laughter and joy, when all she had were crusts of bread? Just then a figure rode through the fairground gates, a striking presence on a chestnut horse. The town paused, all eyes turned to him. He was tall and confident, exuding an energy that pulled people in like moths to a flame. Clara's breath caught in her throat as he dismounted, his cowboy hat casting a shadow over his sun-kissed features. He called, his voice rich and smooth. The crowd erupted into applause and cheers, but Clara felt the warmth of his voice penetrate her soul. She dared to hope for a moment, to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could be part of the joy swirling around her. As he strode closer, those powerful blue eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on her. She felt a jolt, an electricity that coursed through her bones. Would he come over? Would he even see her, this girl hunched in the shadows? He shouted, striding toward her with purpose. Clara's mind raced. What could she possibly say? Just waiting, she managed to reply, feeling the weight of her situation pressing heavily down on her. His eyebrows lifted with genuine curiosity, and with every step he took toward her, Clara felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of hope. I don't know, she whispered, barely audible above the murmur of the crowd. I guess I'm waiting for. He held out his hand, a gesture filled with warmth and promise. Clara hesitated, feeling a mix of fear and excitement clashing within her. Her voice quivered, the doubts flooding in. He grinned, that sunny smile brightening the shadows that clung to her. You've got as much right to enjoy tonight as anyone else. Come on. Before she knew it, Clara found herself standing, slipping her hand into his. The moment she did, she felt the warmth spreading through her body, igniting a fire that had long lain dormant. Okay, she whispered, hardly believing her own words. Together, they walked toward the night, and as they approached the fairgrounds, Clara felt the world around her shift. The laughter grew louder, the colors more vibrant, and suddenly she was no longer just an invisible girl in an alleyway. She was Clara, a girl stepping into a new adventure. Once inside the rodeo grounds, Clara was overwhelmed by the sights and sounds swirling around her. Families, friends, and bright lights all melded together into a whirlwind of joy. Jake, she had finally learned his name, led her into the thrumming heart of the celebration. Clara felt alive as each laugh and cheer wrapped around her like a warm hug. Jake shouted, pointing to a cowboy atop a wild bull, eyes fierce with determination. Clara's heart raced as she watched the rider cling to the bull's back, feeling exhilarated by the daring display. She laughed, feeling the weight of her worries lift slightly. She said, unable to contain herself. She could feel the lightness growing inside her, the joy sparking like the matches she'd fought so hard to keep alive. Jake replied, beaming. As the night unfolded, Clara felt herself being carried along by the energy of the crowd. They danced between the booths, laughed with strangers, and clapped for fearless cowboys. The veil of her insecurities began to dissolve, and she immersed herself in the moment. Clara felt the joy that had remained hidden for too long radiating outwards, painting her in vibrant hues. Jake leaned close, his voice low and teasing as he pulled her toward the dance floor. The folk music was lively and the atmosphere was electric. Clara's heart raced at the thought of dancing in front of all these people. I don't know if I can dance, she admitted, feeling the flutter of nerves, a wave of doubt crashing over her. He said, pulling her onto the floor. As they began to move, Clara found herself swept up in the rhythm, the music entwining around her like a warm embrace. With each step, she felt more alive. The shadows cast by her past faded even further, and as she laughed and twirled, she embraced the freedom that pulsed through her veins. She was dancing, truly dancing, and it felt exhilarating. "See," Jake said, spinning her around, his eyes sparkling with delight. Clara couldn't help but smile, the joy infectious as they celebrated the magic of the night together. But as the hours passed, Clara felt tiny pricks of doubt attempt to penetrate her newfound happiness. Could she really belong in this world? What about tomorrow when the festivities ended and she returned to her reality? A weight began to creep back into her heart. Jake must have sensed the change because he leaned closer, his voice soothing. I don't want this to end," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "What if I go back to being that girl in the alley?" He paused for a moment, searching her gaze. "You won't," he promised. "You've taken the biggest leap already." Finally, Clara exhaled, letting his words settle in. Her fears, while real, didn't have to define her. This feeling of belonging, this joy, she could carry it with her even when the music stopped. "Okay," she said, determination sparking within. "I want to embrace this," Jake replied, pulling her back into the crowd. They danced together until exhaustion began to tug at their limbs, laughter bubbling over as the night sky sparkled with fireworks, illuminating their smiles. "I never thought I could feel this way again," Clara said, breathing deeply as she watched the colorful bursts light up the sky. Just remember, Clara," Jake said, looking deep into her eyes, "this is just the beginning." The fireworks faded into the night, leaving a shimmering glow that mirrored the sparkling connection forged between them. Clara felt truly alive, ready to embrace whatever came next, just as she had embraced the dances, the laughter, and the warmth surrounding her. As the rodeo drew to a close, Clara clung to Jake's arm, reluctant to let go. The night had been transformative. She felt reborn. Turning to him, she said, "Thank you for pulling me out of that alley." Jake grinned, a bright smile lighting his face. "You did it yourself, Clara." The words hung in the cool night air, wrapping around her heart. Clara knew he was right. She had ventured out of her shadows and into the light. The world was full of possibilities now. They stepped away from the fairgrounds, the streets quieter now, the magic of the night beginning to settle into memories. As the stars twinkled overhead, Clara started to envision not just the possibility of another day, but an entirely new life filled with hope and adventure. Jake walked her back toward her alley. He asked, a glimmer of excitement in his voice, "What do you say we explore the town a little more?" Clara replied, her heart thundering with anticipation. "I'd love that." With a promise to meet at dawn, they parted ways, and Clara walked into the shadows of her alley for the last time. But this time felt different. The spirit of the rodeo still pulsed through her heart, igniting flames of adventure she hadn't dared to dream of before. That night, as Clara lay down in her tiny space, sleep didn't come easily. She tossed and turned, her mind racing, but it wasn't from anxiety, it was from possibility. Images of tomorrow flitted through her mind, seeing the town, meeting new faces, embracing the unknown. She pictured herself dancing, laughing, and stepping wholeheartedly into life. Her heart raced at the thought of it. When dawn broke, Clara woke with renewed determination. The sun peeked through the gaps in the alleyway, and as she stepped out, it felt like she was stepping into a new skin. Today, she would no longer be just Clara, the girl who traded bread for matches. She would be Clara, a girl who chased dreams, embraced adventure, and danced under the sun. Excited and nervous, she made her way to the rendezvous point, the air thick with the promise of a brand new day. As she spotted Jake in the early morning light, standing with that familiar warm smile, Clara felt anticipation swell within her heart. He asked, and she nodded, a grin stretching across her face. Together, they stepped into the day, stepping out of the shadows hand in hand, prepared to embrace whatever wonder awaited them. Clara knew that the journey would not always be easy. Life seldom was, but with each step, she felt the burdens of her past slipping away like autumn leaves. The cowboy had brought her in, and now she was ready to ride into the future, ready to find her place in a world that felt more infinite than ever before. The shadows no longer held her. They were being illuminated by the flames of hope she had ignited within herself. With Jake by her side, she was unstoppable, a girl now living fiercely, chasing after every dream the horizon could offer. The cold wind howled through the alleyways of Cedar Hollow, echoing the sound of Clara's stomach growling. She sat against the rough brick wall, hugging her knees close to her chest, her thin arms barely shielding her from the biting chill. In her small, worn bag, she had 3 crusts of stale bread, enough to survive for another day or so, she hoped. Each night she traded her precious bread for matches, small comforts that brought flickering light and warmth to her dark existence. This evening, as she watched the world bustle just beyond her, Clara felt the weight of her solitude. The sounds of laughter flowed down the cobbled streets, warm and inviting, filled with families and friends preparing for the annual rodeo. Each whoop and cheer knocked against her heart like a sledgehammer. Would she ever laugh again? Would she ever be part of something so vibrant? Tonight was different. Clara could see the bright lights from the fairgrounds illuminating the night sky, an irresistible lure. She struck a match, the flame bursting to life, illuminating the hollow contours of her face for just a moment. As she watched the light flicker, she felt an ocean of longing wash over her. What would it be like to trade this isolation for warmth, to not just survive but truly live? Just then something caught her eye. A figure emerged from the bustling crowd. A cowboy, tall and rugged, rode in on a chestnut horse. With a broad-brimmed hat tilted slightly down, he looked like something out of a storybook. The townsfolk paused, whispers rippling through the crowd as he dismounted with a confident swagger. The energy shifted, he commanded attention in a way that turned heads and ignited curiosity. His voice boomed, rich and inviting. Clara felt the warmth of his presence even from a distance. It sparked something in her, something she hadn't felt in years. He swept his hat off with a charming flourish, greeting the crowd like an old friend. He continued, and the crowd erupted with cheers. Clara felt her heart race. He was different, more alive than anyone she had encountered in so long. The way he moved reminded her of the freedom she so desperately craved. As she dared to dream of breaking free, she felt her heart beat louder. But still, she hid in the shadows, afraid that fate would pull her back into the darkness. The cowboy's gaze swept across the crowd and suddenly landed on her. Clara froze. Would he see her? Would he reach out? And then, as if he had read her thoughts, he started walking toward her. The crowd parted like water, his confidence radiating like sunlight breaking through clouds. He called, his voice like honey, rich and warm. She swallowed, feeling the weight of his attention. I'm just waiting, she stammered, unsure and deeply aware of her ragged clothes and hollow eyes. Waiting for what? He stepped closer, and for the first time Clara felt seen, not as some forgotten girl, but as someone worth noticing. She hesitated, too trapped in her own fears to speak the truth. I've lost a lot, he replied, that infectious grin growing wider. You've got as much right to be here as anyone else. Despite the voice in her head urging caution, Clara felt a jolt of something unfamiliar, hope. Before she could overthink it, she nodded, her heart pounding. Okay. As they walked toward the excitement, Clara's senses were overwhelmed. The colors, the lights, the laughter pulsing through the air like a living thing, it was intoxicating. With each step, she felt her burdens lighten, the shadows of her past receding just a little. Name's Jake, by the way, he introduced himself, glancing over at her with friendly sincerity. Nice to meet you, Clara. With that, they reached the entrance and Clara stepped into the arena as if stepping into another world. Bright banners flapped in the warm breeze, laughing children scampered by, and the smell of popcorn enveloped her like a hug. Excitement bubbled within her chest as they moved past booths filled with games and treats. She looked at Jake and saw a glimmer of something more than just adventure in his eyes. There was an understanding. As the rodeo began, Clara found herself completely absorbed. She cheered for cowboys who roped calves, gasped as riders were thrown by bucking broncos, and laughed with Jake at the antics of a not-so-serious clown. She felt alive, each cheer washing away layers of pain and isolation she carried for so long. See. Jake shouted over the noise, his excitement infectious. Clara nodded, overwhelmed with feelings she thought had been buried forever. She remembered how to laugh. As the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, Clara danced with abandon, the rhythm of life pulsing through her. She shouted, spinning around, dizzy with emotion and exhilaration. But amid the thrill, shadows re-emerged and Clara's laughter faltered. What would happen tomorrow? Would she return to the alley, back to the shadows and bread for matches? Would this night be just a fleeting escape? Jake must have sensed her hesitation. He asked, leaning into her light. I don't want this to end, she confessed, biting her lip. Then we fight the same fight again, he replied, earnest eyes meeting hers. But tonight, focus on now. His words sunk in, wrapping around her heart like a lifeline. She had stepped out of the darkness and tasted light again. You're right, she nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her. As the fireworks lit up the night sky, Clara buried her doubts and took a deep breath. This moment was hers, and she grasped it tightly, wanting to remember every detail, the brightness, the joy, the feeling of laughter filling her soul like air filling her lungs. But as the last crackle of fireworks faded, a chill danced through the crowd. Clara caught a glimpse of a familiar face amid the joyful chaos, someone she had hoped to never see again. A man stood at the edge of the fairgrounds, his scowl like a dark cloud amid the brightness. It was Victor, her old landlord, the very man whose refusal to help had left her homeless. Her heart dropped. Without a word, he began to move toward her, looming larger with each step. The warmth of the night melted away as dread filled her stomach, forcing her back into the shadows she had momentarily escaped. He called, and she could hear the condescension dripping from his tone. Fancy seeing you here. Jake, noticing her shift in energy, turned to her. Clara's voice trembled, caught between fear and fight. It's him. Victor approached, closing the distance too fast, an ominous presence in this world of light. He smirked, his eyes sliding over to Jake, sizing him up. Something within Clara ignited. She felt fury bubbling up as she glanced back at Jake, who stood protective beside her, the warmth of his presence igniting her own courage. I'm not playing games, she shot back, her voice steady despite the trembling within. I'm living. The crowd around them began to notice, buzz growing as they felt the tension, as if the air had thickened. Clara stood her ground, the brightness of the fairgrounds flickering in contrast with Victor's dark shadow. Victor taunted, stepping closer. You're just a lost little girl playing at life. In that moment, something clicked inside Clara. She was tired of cowering, tired of being the girl who always ran. The laughter, the warmth she had felt tonight, none of it had been a lie. She drew strength from those experiences, filling her with enough courage to rise above the memories that had tried to chain her down. "I don't need your approval, Victor," she declared, her voice rising above the murmurs. "I'm not going back. I'm moving forward with or without you." Jake stepped closer, standing beside her. "You need to walk away, man." Victor's face twisted in rage as he looked between them, humiliation burning behind his eyes. Clara felt the power in her words, feeling the heat of determination swell within her. As the crowd started to back away, Clara took a deep breath, facing Victor. "You may have tried to break me, but I'm not broken." And just like that, everything shifted. The cowboy who had brought her into the light had lit a fire within her that no one could snuff out. As Victor stepped back, incredulous, Clara felt the smiles and cheers of the crowd washing over her, the warmth surrounding her like a protective shield. "Get out of here," Jake urged, standing firm, and Clara felt gratitude fill her heart. She had faced the darkness and emerged intact, ready to forge her own path. With Victor retreating, fear still fluttered in Clara's heart. Did she truly have the strength to move forward? What would tomorrow bring? Jake asked, concern painted across his face as Clara took a shuddering breath. "I think I finally am," she said, feeling the adrenaline pulse through her. But as the crowd began to disperse, a new wave of uncertainty washed over her. Would she be strong enough to keep fighting? And would she be able to reclaim her light each day as she walked that path? With the night still alive around them, the cowboy held out his hand and Clara took it. They turned together to face a new dawn, stepping away from the shadows for good. But just as they did, Clara could feel the weight of her past lingering on the edges, ready to weigh her down again. Would she truly break free? Would tomorrow be the day she finally turned the corner, or would the shadows return? One thing was certain, she was ready to find out, one brave step at a time.